So we've been working with a little bit of audio, and now we need to be able to manipulate the time that that audio plays in. So this is a little bit crude in some places and then a little bit experimental in other places. But if we understand what it's trying to achieve, then we'll understand how we can use this to create some interesting effects or to manipulate the audio that we're working with. So first of all, time stretching. Time stretching literally extends a piece between the left and the right parts of that region. So we activate this by putting the mouse to the bottom right hand corner and pressing the Alt key, which changes the little bracket with the arrows to bracket with a kind of a little pyramid. So you already will notice that you can't change the length. You can only make it shorter, you can't make it longer. But once we press Alt, we can then stretch this to fit elsewhere. So at the moment, it's this long. I'm going to make it so that the actual phrasing is 32 bars rather than 25. So it's reprocessed that audio. Now it's probably not going to play in time now, but the region fits the length that it's supposed to. Put it back to what it was. So I put my drums in and I just go and grab another audio file to put in here. This is like another part that will fit with this. But I'm going to say I'm going to trim it down. And I'm going to stretch it so it's 4 times as long. Turn the volume down a little bit. So as you can see, it's a little bit crude. It doesn't really alter things brilliantly. If we give you one last example of stretching the drums, we do this. It might work though, doubling up. Weird echo, kind of quite nice at the same time. But you can hear though that this sound is starting to pull apart from itself and create some little artifacts. So we just go back. Okay, so time stretching itself isn't really amazingly useful for something that is rhythmically bound. If it's a loop and we stretch this, it needs to fit where it needs to be in the same tempo so that it's going to have a chance of fitting. The longer you stretch something, the further apart you're pulling all of the parts of the audio, so it will lose its clarity in the detail. So a way of getting around this, or a way of giving yourself a little bit more control, is by using the flex. So the flex, where we mentioned about quantization before, we turn the flex on here and then we have to activate it for all the channels that we want to work with. So I'm going to turn it on this. And what you can see is that there's little lines and grids that have been added in over this audio file that then allow you to pull and move the sections apart. So I'm just going to grab one and show you. Drag this and you can see when I hover over it now, it's given me a little line across the top of the audio file, so you can see how far it's been stretched. You can also see that everything that has been lengthened goes darker. Anything that's been shortened essentially goes brighter. So if I zoom in again here, and I'm going to bring this back. So this is really quick now, and all the rest is slowed down. So we've got now for me though, this is where it starts to get a little bit more interesting, because I've heard something there straight away that if I was to create a new loop out of this part, I think that would work quite well. So just going to keep that, and you'll notice that I copied that and moved it so that I could continue working with this file. But essentially what I would like to be able to do is then maybe create my track using this new sample. You see that's not quite on the beat, so this can be used to tighten up the timing, but it can also be used to completely change the timing. Now in this example, I'm literally just experimenting with the anchor points so that you can move them around and understand how this is working. If we go a little bit further, if you put your mouse at the top, it gives you one anchor. If you put your mouse kind of a little bit lower down, it gives you 3. And why this is useful is because if you have this is the note that you want to change the timing of, by putting 3 markers in, you could obviously do that manually, 1, 2, 3, and move this. But by adding those 3 markers in, so 1, 2, 3, you can just alter 1 bit. So later on when we start working with vocals and things, this is quite nice for pulling different harmonies or different layers in time so that it all fits together perfectly. And it can be the difference between a really high-end track and a track that is not fully polished. Now, there are several other options that are on here. This is to do with the way that the audio is being sliced up so that it can be moved around. So it will try and work out what is the best way depending on the sounds that have been played. Monophonic means that with a synthesizer that only one note can be played at once. So this flex mode would be looking for a single note. So this would possibly be good for bass. Slicing is good for drum parts. Slicing and rhythmic are good for drum parts because it looks at dividing it up a little bit more evenly. Polyphonic, so polyphonic being the continuation of monophonic, so monophonic being one note at a time, polyphonic being multiple notes or or potentially a chord. So this is going to be better for your melodic elements. Now, these are not perfect for each method that you might, or for each manipulation that you might try. So I would experiment with them to see which ones suit you best. Now finally, we also have flex pitch. Flex pitch, if we double click onto the part and open it in our piano roll, if we get enough of this space here and turn it on, oops, pitch, there we go. So now this is really clever. So what's happening is you can see the audio file behind, and it has worked out what MIDI notes it thinks the part is playing. And if you hover over a note, we can grab the whole note. We can micro tune it, so fine pitch control. We can do the drift, which is if the note is sliding into the next. We can also add whether it is kind of male or female, that is the formant. We can add some vibrato or make the note kind of straighter. And we can actually make it louder or quieter. And you can see that it's manipulating the waveform as well. So if I do that, just so that we can really hear some of this, that it's done. So not the best example, but this is a way that we can start to understand the relationship between the MIDI and the audio and how this can help us affect time and also pitch. So we will come back and look at this with some other examples, and we will look at this with some kind of vocals, because this is where it becomes really, really useful.